All right, so we're diving into something kind of wild today.
Oh, yeah, tell me more.
We're talking about fear.
Fear, huh?
Yeah, you know that thing that makes you want to hide under the covers?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I know it well.
But get this. What if I told you we could make fear our secret weapon?
Okay, that's a twist. Where are we going with this?
We're cracking open Robert Greene's The 50th Law.
Ah, Green always gets you thinking.
Exactly. And this book, man, it's not your typical self-help fluff.
No kidding.
It's about looking at fear dead in the eye and saying, hey, I'm going to use you to my advantage.
I like the sound of that already.
So we're talking about how to cultivate fearlessness in a world obsessed with anxiety.
Yeah, it feels like everywhere you turn, someone's trying to sell you on being scared of something.
Right, and we're going to unpack all of that using Greene's insights.
Sounds like a plan.
And you know what's really interesting about the 50th Law?
What's that?
Greene doesn't just pull from, like, self-help gurus or whatever.
No way!
He dives into history.
History.
Yeah, like way back.
Yeah.
He looks at figures like Napoleon,
Napoleon Bonaparte, the military mastermind.
the one and only.
What's the connection to fearlessness there?
Well, Greene argues that Napoleon's genius wasn't just about strategy.
Okay, go on.
It was about his almost superhuman ability to control his fear, to not be ruled by it, even in the heat of battle.
That's fascinating because you always picture those historical figures as being larger than life, fearless.
Right, but Greene pulls back the curtain and shows us they were human too. They felt fear just like us.
So are you saying we all have that potential for that kind of fearlessness?
Exactly, that's what we're going to explore today.
I'm intrigued.
And you know who else Greene uses as a prime example in the book?
Let me guess another historical heavyweight.
Well, actually, it's 50 Cent.
Wait, 50 Cent, the rapper?
Yep, 50 Cent himself.
Now that's a curveball I wasn't expecting.
I know, right? Talk about two different paths to power. Napoleon, a military genius from centuries past, and 50 Cent, a hip-hop mogul who rose to fame in the 90s.
Yeah, it's not exactly the pairing you'd expect in a book about fearlessness.
Right, but that's what makes Greene's work so compelling. He connects the dots between these seemingly unrelated figures and shows us there's a common thread.
So what's the common thread? What's the link between Napoleon and 50 Cent?
Well, it's not about having the same personality or skill set.
Okay, I'm listening.
It's about understanding how fear itself works,
I fear. Yeah.
and then using that understanding to your advantage.
I mean, that makes sense when you think about it. Fear is a powerful motivator.
Absolutely, and it's been around since the dawn of humanity.
Oh, yeah. Way back.
Back in the caveman days, fear was essential for survival.
I can imagine, right? Fear of a saber-toothed tiger probably kept you from becoming lunch?
Exactly. It was a short, sharp signal to avoid danger stat.
Makes perfect sense.
But here's the catch. Our environment has changed drastically, but our primal fear response hasn't quite caught up.
So we're hardwired for a world that doesn't really exist anymore.
Pretty much. We no longer face down woolly mammoths, but we're bombarded with a constant stream of anxieties.
Oh, tell me about it. Work deadlines, social media comparisons.
The news! Don't even get me started on those targeted ads that seem to know exactly what keeps me up at night.
Right, like they're reading our minds.
And that's exactly what Greene wants us to see. Advertisers and the media, they're masters at tapping into that primal fear response.
So they're using our own biology against us.
Precisely. They know that if they can make you afraid, even subtly, you're more likely to buy what they're selling, whether it's a product, an idea, or a certain worldview.
That's pretty sobering when you think about it. How much of our fear is actually being manipulated?
It's a lot more than we realize. And that's why the 50th Law is so important. It gives us the tools to break free from that cycle of fear and anxiety.
Okay, so how do we do that? How do we escape the fear trap?
Well, it all starts with understanding that fear was designed to be a temporary response, not a permanent state of being.
Meaning it's not supposed to control our lives.
Exactly. Greene argues that when we allow ourselves to get stuck in a perpetual state of fear, it distorts our perception of the world.
It's like looking at everything through a funhouse mirror.
In a way, we start seeing threats everywhere, even when they're not really there.
So our fear becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Precisely. We become so afraid of failing or making a mistake that we don't even try.
And that's how fear keeps us stuck?
It's like looking through a pair of fear-tinted glasses. Everything seems scarier, and we underestimate our own ability to handle it.
And we miss out on opportunities because we're too afraid to take a risk.
Exactly. And that's where the 50th Law comes in.
Okay, tell me more.
It's about recognizing that we have a choice.
A choice about how we respond to fear.
Exactly. We can choose to be ruled by fear, or we can choose courage, even when it feels difficult.
So it's about reclaiming our power.
That's the heart of it. So how do we actually, flip the script?
Yeah.
How do we go from being ruled by fear to choosing courage? What does that even look like in real life?
That's the million-dollar question, right? It's easy to talk about courage, but when you're faced with a situation that makes your palms sweat, well, it's a whole different ballgame.
Exactly. So how do we bridge that gap? How do we turn theory into action?
Well, that's where the real meat of the 50th law kicks in. It's not just about like facing your fears head on, it's about transforming how you see reality itself.
Okay, I like where you're going with this. Tell me more.
50 Cent has this great line. He says, "Reality is my drug. The more I have of it, the more power I get and the higher I feel."
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah.
So he's talking about like confronting reality head on, the good, the bad, the ugly.
Exactly. He's saying that true power comes from seeing things as they really are not, as we wish they were.
It's like that raw honesty gives you this crystal clear vision,
Mhm.
right? You're seeing the playing field without any illusions or distractions.
Precisely. And with that clarity, you can make smarter moves. You can spot opportunities that other people miss because they're blinded by fear or wishful thinking.
It's like you're one step ahead because you're not afraid to see the whole picture.
Exactly. And Greene talks about how our culture has become hooked on escapism. We're surrounded by fantasies and
Oh,
distraction.
tell me about it. It's everywhere you look. Movies, social media, even the news sometimes.
Right. It's tempting to just tune out the hard parts of life to retreat into our little bubbles of comfort.
I mean, I get it. Nobody wants to feel uncomfortable or deal with tough emotions.
Of course. But here's the thing, that escapism, it comes at a price.
What do you mean?
When we avoid reality, we make ourselves more vulnerable to manipulation.
Because we're not seeing things clearly.
Exactly. We lose touch with what's really going on, and that weakens our grip on reality.
It's like living in a fantasy world leaves you totally unprepared for the real one.
Precisely. You lose that sense of urgency, that drive to adapt and overcome challenges.
So how do we break free from that cycle of escapism?
Yeah.
How do we develop that courage to face reality head on?
Well, Greene talks about this idea of turning shit into sugar.
Turning shit into sugar. Okay, that's a new one.
It's about taking those negative situations, those curveballs life throws at you, and finding the opportunity hidden within them.
So it's like next level lemonade making.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about seeing setbacks as opportunities for growth and reinvention.
Can you give me an example of what that looks like in the real world?
Absolutely. Think about 50 Cent again. After he was shot and dropped from his label, he could have easily given up on music.
Most people would have.
Right. But instead of letting that experience destroy him, he used it to fuel his creativity.
So he turned a negative into a positive.
He did. He launched a mixed hit campaign that shook up the entire industry. He turned shit into a comeback story for the ages.
He didn't just make lemonade, he built a whole empire on it.
Exactly. And that's the power of this mindset. It's about seeing obstacles not as dead ends, but as detours on the road to success.
But how can someone apply that kind of thinking to their own life? You know, what if you're facing a career setback or a personal challenge? That's not exactly the same as getting shot.
You're right. It's not about comparing struggles. It's about the underlying principle, which is that we always have a choice in how we respond to adversity.
So instead of letting a setback define us, we can choose to learn from it and come back stronger.
Exactly. It starts with a shift in perspective. Instead of seeing an obstacle as a dead end, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? Or how can I use this to my advantage?
It's about training your mind to see those lemons as an opportunity to create something even better than you imagined. So it's about resilience, but also about creativity, about finding a new path forward when the old one is blocked.
Exactly. And that ties back to the idea of choosing courage. When you're facing a setback, fear tells you to give up to play it safe. Courage is about saying, okay, that didn't work, but I'm not done yet. What's next?
That's the spirit.
Hmm.
But sometimes it's not just about overcoming obstacles. It's about knowing when to push back, when to fight for what you believe in.
You're right. And that's where another key principle of the 50th law comes into play, knowing when to be bad.
Okay, being bad. That sounds a little risky, doesn't it?
It might sound counterintuitive, but Greene isn't advocating for unethical behavior. He's talking about recognizing that life isn't always a fair game.
So it's about being strategic.
Exactly. Sometimes you need to be a bit ruthless to protect your interests and achieve your goals.
So it's about setting boundaries, standing up for yourself, not letting others walk all over you.
Precisely. And it's about being discerning. Greene talks about recognizing different types of aggression.
Different types of aggression, like what?
Well, there's direct aggression where someone's intentions are clear, but then there's passive aggression, which is all about manipulation and undermining you subtly.
Okay, so we're talking about those people who play mind games. Those who try to hold you back with subtle digs and backhanded compliments. What's the best way to handle those types?
Sometimes you just gotta call them out on it. Set those boundaries firm but fair. Like imagine Catherine the Great dealing with a manipulative husband.
Peter the Third.
Yeah, Peter the Third. He was constantly trying to undermine her power.
Oh, absolutely. He was threatened by her.
Right, and she didn't let him get away with it. She saw through his act and ultimately took action to protect her position.
She was a savvy one.
She knew what she was dealing with.
So it's a power move, but also about self-preservation, knowing your worth, not letting yourself be a pawn in someone else's game.
Exactly. And, this whole idea of knowing when to be bad isn't just about fending off manipulators. Sometimes it's about shaking up the status quo, disrupting the system to make space for something new.
You know what that reminds me of? Those bebop jazz legends back in the 1940s, like Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
They were up against a music industry that was pretty much closed off to black artists.
It was a different time.
So they did what they had to do. They created a whole new sound, challenged the conventions, and basically reinvented jazz music.
And they changed music history. They were rebels, rule breakers, and they knew that sometimes real change means being bold, being disruptive, even if it makes some people uncomfortable.
Yeah, they weren't afraid to ruffle some feathers.
And look at the impact they had. They changed the face of music.
Exactly. It's like they were saying, we're not waiting for permission to share our gifts with the world. They created their own lane.
And that's the spirit of the 50th Law. It's about recognizing that we have more agency than we think. We're not just passive players. We can shape the game itself. But to do that, you need to master your craft, hone your skills so you're operating at the top of your game.
It's about putting in the work, the dedication, not just relying on talent or luck. It's like 50 Cent after he was shot. He didn't let that stop him. He doubled down, honed his craft, and came back stronger than ever.
Right. He turned a near-death experience into fuel for his ambition. He understood that mastery requires commitment. It's about embracing the process, even when it's tough, even when it means pushing past your comfort zone.
It's about pushing those limits.
Exactly. And that's how you achieve true mastery.
So it's about resilience, dedication, but also that unshakable belief in yourself, in your potential.
Yes. And that ties into another key takeaway from the 50th Law, internalizing the rules of the game. Every field, every industry has its own set of written, unwritten rules, power dynamics you need to understand if you want to navigate them successfully.
It's like learning a new language, understand the cultural cues so you can communicate effectively and achieve your goals.
Exactly. Look at someone like Thurgood Marshall, the first African-American Supreme Court justice. He knew that to dismantle the Jim Crow system, he couldn't just fight it head on. He had to master the legal system from the inside, understand its language, its nuances, its loopholes.
He played the long game.
He did. And it paid off. He used their own system to create lasting change. And that's incredibly powerful. But it takes serious self-belief to navigate those spaces, especially when you're facing resistance, prejudice even.
Absolutely, and that's where a core message of the 50th Law resonates so strongly today. It's about cultivating a strong sense of self-worth that doesn't depend on external validation.
Yeah.
You can't control what other people think of you, but you can control how you see yourself.
You've got to have that inner strength.
Exactly, because when you believe in yourself, truly believe in your own value, that's when you become unstoppable.
And this idea of self-belief goes hand in hand with another principle from the book, The Power of Reinvention. Life is about growth evolution, and your image, your approach should reflect that. Don't be afraid to shed old versions of yourself as you evolve.
I like that quote, the only constant is change.
Exactly. We're constantly growing, learning, transforming ourselves. And our approach to life, our image, should reflect that.
That makes me think of someone like John F. Kennedy. He was a master of reinvention, adapting his image to connect with different audiences, always evolving his approach to leadership.
Right. He understood that image can be a powerful tool, but it needs to be authentic to who you are and where you're going. It's about being strategic, yes, but also staying true to yourself as you navigate the complexities of life.
So we've talked about mastering your craft, knowing when to be bold, but the 50th Law also encourages us to embrace uncertainty, to step into the unknown.
It's about recognizing that the greatest rewards often lie outside your comfort zone. When you avoid risks, you limit your potential. Think about someone like Joan of Arc, a young peasant girl who defied all odds because she had this unwavering belief in her vision.
She didn't let fear hold her back.
She didn't. She embraced the unknown and changed the course of history.
She saw a different path and she went for it.
Exactly. And that's what the 50th Law is all about, recognizing that you have more power than you think to shape your reality. It's about facing your fears, mastering your craft, and stepping boldly into the unknown to create a life of purpose and power.
It's about writing your own story.
Exactly. You're not just a character in someone else's narrative. You're the author of your own life.
So there you have it, a deep dive into the 50th law. It's a call to action, a reminder that we're not just passengers on this ride. We have the power to grab the wheel, navigate the chaos, and create a life that's both extraordinary and truly fulfilling.
And remember, this is just the beginning. The real work starts now as you take these insights and apply them to your own life.
Exactly. So what will you choose to create? Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, keep pushing yourself to live a life defined by courage, not fear.